Good morning, it's May the 6th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News, your cannabis and psychedelics news source. Good morning, Rev Cindy. How you doing?
Good morning, Al. I am doing well, especially when I remembered that we were doing the news this morning when my phone went off, just before I started sending the... I'm not used to Mondays, right? So...
Yeah, I didn't see anything there this morning when I got up. Yes, well, hey, welcome back. I know that you've been out west, went to BC. How was everything?
BC was pretty amazing. I went out there and did, of course, a whole bunch of different modalities of medicine for a week. And that was interesting in and of itself. You know, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there was 8 different modalities that we did in the week, so it was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, of course, I spent the countdown to 420 and 420 at a couple of different events out there, which was it was pretty awesome, but kind of shockingly sad at the same time. I mean, there were 4 different events planned for Vancouver.
Oh, really?
The cops shut 2 down. Like, they went down and they totally gated off Thornton Park and Sunset Beach before, 2 days beforehand. They showed up at the art gallery and were arresting people and, taking supplies. And then at the 4th event, which is where I was, the cops ended up being called by somebody, and we all took off before the cops showed up. We got the heads up, but they were on their way.
On the way.
Yeah,
that's too bad. Yeah, we reported on some of that here on the news show. Just so you know, this past Saturday, Global Marijuana March was held around the world. We were part of the broadcast and part of the event in Toronto. I can tell you that I'm going to say there's probably twice as many vendors and people that attended the march versus last year. It's a bit of a rebirth of it, being that COVID and cannabis legalization here in Canada, really dampened things down, and so there's still lots more work to do. I interviewed several people on the march and asked them why they were marching, and they said because cannabis has to be legal globally.
It does, yeah, and that's why it's a global marijuana march. And one of the things that I've noticed just by talking to people, whether it be at 420 out in BC or talking to people around Nova Scotia, a lot more awareness is coming back up for medical cannabis, and people are wanting more and more and more to renew their licenses that I have seen in the small sample of people, it's really nice to see. And those that don't have their license but have a condition that would allow them to have a license, it's educating them to. It gives them more benefits. They here in Canada, you're only allowed to carry 28 grams unless you have a prescription saying you can have more. So there are benefits and ways to inform people. It'll make traveling within the country a lot easier if you have your license.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, we'll get on with the news and start talking about medical cannabis. First story of the day coming to us from MJ Biz Daily.
Yes, Canada's medical cannabis exports jump to $220 million as domestic sales fall.
Wow. Canadian exports of medical cannabis hit an all-time high last year as the country's licensed producers continue to diversify from the competitive local market in favor of pursuing top-line opportunities overseas. In 2023-24 fiscal year, Canada exported roughly 218 million Canadian dollars worth of medical cannabis products for commercial and scientific use.
Wow, that's an increase of more than 36% from the previous year's exports, of $160 million. The data from Regulatory Health Canada paints a picture of brisk and consistent growth in the export sector.
In previous years, the revenue of cannabis exports reported by licensed producers was $8 million when it started in 2019, 2020. 2021-22 had risen up to $107 million worth.
Yeah, that's a big jump.
Yeah. Now, the data can be subject to revision, as they say.
Yes, yes. Health Canada said the 2023 data is subject to revision, as you just said. Some Canadian cannabis companies have looked to capitalize on opportunities overseas, in part to dodge a multitude of hurdles in their home market. Those challenges include an onerous excise tax regime imposed on the industry by the federal government, as well as provinces gouging businesses via government-owned wholesalers, according to experts.
Yeah, big time. Look, you can see the graph there, the chart there showing how there's an increase every year in the sales. Deepak Anand, principal of ASDA Consultancy Services in Surrey, BC, suggested that Canadian cannabis producers benefited from the first mover advantage after Canada legalized cannabis in late of 2018. He says, on the one hand, Canada's reputation for producing high-quality cannabis products at competitive prices has positioned it as the preferred supplier in the global market. On the other hand, slow regulatory developments in the other lower-cost jurisdictions, such as Colombia, have limited their ability to compete effectively.
Countries that had declared their intention. Woo! Sorry, my cat's getting into stuff.
Oh.
I apologize. Here, if you just want to continue on.
Yeah, I will. Countries that have declared their intention to net importers of cannabis, including Australia, Colombia, Israel, Jamaica, and Portugal, have faced various challenges exporting meaningful quantities. Anand says challenges faced by producers in other countries provided Canada with a significant advantage, helping to drive an increase in cannabis exports from Canada.
Thank you. The trend in exports contrasts with Canada's domestic market, which has been in a free fall for a number of years. In the 2023-24 fiscal year, ended in March, Canada's medical cannabis spending was at $355 million, according to Statistics Canada data.
That marked a 13% decline from the previous year's $409 million. The figure for 23-24 represents a 41% decline from the peak of 2019-2020, when Canadians spent $603 million on regulated medical cannabis products. Well, now there's more people just walking in the recreational stores.
Yeah, it's they can walk into a store and not have to wait for something to show up in the mail. I get that too, right?
Yeah. Question 5.2 of the Review Act.
Yeah. The last time medical cannabis spending was this low was in 2016-2017, before recreational cannabis was legalized. Mitchell Osk, president of the Toronto-based Quanta Consulting, said the medical cannabis industry is being hobbled by systematic problems such as excessive taxes, low insurance reimbursement, and access to products via traditional pharmacies.
Why taxes on any medical cannabis, of any tax, not just an excise tax, but any tax on medical cannabis?
Yes.
Yeah. He goes on to say it also doesn't help that patients can often get the exact same product from the same LP for a much cheaper price in the adult use market. Question 5.2. All large LPs struggle with a declining domestic medical cannabis market and slowing adult use growth, punitive excise taxes, and hyper competition.
The savvy LPs have discovered a new lucrative channel for profitable and high growth, exporting medical cannabis. Which is, they're gonna make more money there, and they're it's actually they get to sell it at a less rate but make more money, a smaller
they can move
amount.
More of it. Yeah, they can move larger quantities.
Yep.
It's it's good to see that the country is exporting cannabis. Like, when did you ever think that was going to happen? Because it was always against the law to do, right?
Well,
You know?
I mean, we were exporting and importing stuff, but whether it was legal or not. But yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of neat
yeah.
to see it happening this way, and watching a lot of legacy growers moving towards the legal route and doing this. It's kind of cool to see your friends' cannabis end up in Germany, for
Yeah,
instance,
yeah,
right?
yeah. All right, on to the next story.
Coming to us from StratCan, Manitoba businesses caught off guard by province's recent pause on controlled access retail cannabis licenses.
2 Manitoba businesses say they were caught off guard by a recent change to the province's cannabis store licensing program, impacting their business plans. In April, the Manitoba government said it was placing a temporary freeze on any new controlled access retail cannabis licenses for at least 6 months while the new provincial government looked into the issue more. These licenses for retail cannabis stores allow for cannabis to be sold in convenience stores and gas stations that carry other non-cannabis products.
The province currently lists 205 cannabis stores licensed. 11 of those stores are controlled access stores. Eduardo Famakin, a spokesperson for Manitoba cannabis producer Wow Kapow, said he and his partners were blindsided by the announcement as they were in the final stages of receiving approval for an agreement with Manitoba retail gas station Domo to supply the chain with their locally produced cannabis products.
Famakin tells StratCan that while Kapow and Domo had been in talks with the provincial government about their plans to supply 5 gas stations in the Winnipeg area with cannabis products and had expected some of the first licenses to be issued in May of this year. Instead, he said he learned of the news that the province was pausing the program in media reports rather than from the government, something that has left him and his colleagues confused.
He says Wow Kapow signed an agreement in June of 2023 with Domo to supply several of their locations with cannabis. An ongoing discussion, he says, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries and the Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Authority of Manitoba were aware of. We all had a big meeting about how we were going to do this, explains the frustrated Famakin. Then over the next 11 months, we all worked together to get everything ready. So seeing this in the news, instead of them informing us, it was gut-wrenching. It threw us off.
Just imagine. Now he sees the company is already having to lay off employees they had hired in expectation of this new agreement. In a prepared statement sent to StratCan, Douglas and Kate Everett, the chairman and president of Domo Corporation, said the company was disappointed to hear of the pause on the issue of licenses for controlled access cannabis stores, a change they blame on lobbying from the Manitoba's Retail Cannabis Council, an organization representing some cannabis stores in the province.
After a year-long, extremely detailed application process, Domo was in the final stages of obtaining controlled access retailer licenses for our 5 stores when the government derailed the process. We feel it is particularly unfortunate that the Manitoba government is favoring large out-of-province chain retailers instead of local Manitoba-based cultivars, distributors, and retailers. Some cannabis retailers in the province have in the past expressed concern about such licenses. Melanie Bekovich, owner of Mystic Cannabis in Winnipeg and a member of the Retail Cannabis Council of Manitoba, told StratCan earlier this year that the organization had met with the Manitoba government to express their concerns with how these licenses were being issued.
The RCCMB is pleased that the minister has been responsive to the industry's calls for a review on the controlled access license regulatory, says Bekovich. This category was intended to provide access to legal cannabis for rural and remote communities, but we're seeing most of these licenses in Winnipeg and Brandon. A review of the category could ensure controlled access licensing is being used in the spirit of its original intent. The minister will need to find a balance between limiting exposure of minors to cannabis sales and access in rural remote communities. Stephen Stairs, the chairperson of the Cannabis Business Association of Manitoba, questions the pause, arguing that Manitoba needs more access to legal cannabis, not less.
Why put a moratorium on the controlled access licenses? If anything, we need more of these in urban areas to combat the black market. Recent police reports have shown that the black market cannabis industry is selling cannabis through small corner stores and bodegas. Pausing the ability for these types of stores to become legal licensed stores only enables the black market to continue selling out of these locations across the city without obstruction. Femikin at Wow Kapow says one of his frustrations is that the new provincial government, which replaced the previous government in an election in 2023, has not contacted stakeholders like Wow Kapow or Domo to let them know about the changes in advance.
Yeah, he says that in their review process, they should have consulted the regulatory bodies to see the impact of the decisions to stakeholders who have been working with them the entire time. For existing applications already in the system, to end it without any type of communication or forewarning is striking. I don't think there's just cause for the pause. Manitoba producers need more places to sell Manitoba products. Now, Glenn Simard, Manitoba Minister of Sport, Culture, Heritage, and Tourism, as well as the minister responsible for the Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries Corporation, told StratCan the pause on such licenses was in urban areas and was based on concerns with young people being able to potentially access cannabis in less than secure retail settings.
We know that when legalization took place, that this was a new and emerging market. As with liquor and lotteries, our focus is on ensuring social responsibility, Samar tells StratCan. We want to make sure that people are accessing cannabis in a safe and reliable manner. What we see now is that consumers don't struggle to access cannabis. With over 200 stores in Manitoba, people in urban areas have access to cannabis. The directive I've provided to MBLL through the board chair is to put a pause on licenses for controlled access in urban areas and cities. We do have concerns about the availability of cannabis for young people, and we want to make sure that we're making socially responsible choices. Widespread availability of cannabis outside of an age-restricted area is a concern, and we want to make sure we're balancing availability and social responsibility.
He added, I'll be frank, we're not hearing an overwhelming desire for Manitobans to see cannabis available in convenience stores. That's why we're taking the time to do a review and get this right. People would expect this on the liquor side, where we're always considered market viability when looking at liquor retail licenses. Samard also says the new provincial government has no plans of changing Manitoba's private retail cannabis model into a publicly owned retail model, despite some claims from the opposition.
One important side note, we're not looking to bring cannabis sales under public ownership and are committed to working with our existing retail partners to ensure a continued focus on social responsibility.
So it's like they kept saying they're stopping the urban end. So they're still licensing for the people who are on the rural end, because they kept saying urban.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is they are looking at it within the city of, like, say Winnipeg.
That's urban, yeah.
Or areas, which I kind of understand, because there's a lot of standalone cannabis stores.
And the program was set up for areas that that don't have coverage.
Yeah.
Where there isn't a lot of people who would go set up just a retail store in cannabis. It's sort of like they're near Roseneath. There's a business just outside of there that has, it's just a regular retail store, but it has alcohol. It's not a liquor store. It's not a regular. It's just servicing an area that is under. Doesn't have many. It's rural.
And honestly, I mean, convenience stores.
Just down the road here. I got one just down the road.
Convenience stores have carried cigarettes for absolute years, and they, one of the things that we're taught when we work retail in a convenience store is how to check for ID. They have to look over a certain age. I think the age now is 30 or something like that. So it's the exact principle for cannabis, right? Yeah, in the stores, like it used to be, you look overnight, you have, right? So
yeah, if you look under 30, you're gonna get asked for ID. Correct. Yeah.
which is totally fine. I'm
those.
52, and if you want to ask me for ID, I might leap over there and give you a kiss on the cheek, right? Because at 52, if you want to card me, let's do this. But I mean, if the cashiers are being taught how to card for cigarettes, it's the exact same principle for cannabis or alcohol for that matter. Yeah. Right? So if you're going to allow them to carry cigarettes and alcohol, cannabis is right there with it, as far as the Canadian laws. So
yeah. Well, I can see, because they should still be issuing them on the rural end of things. And, Manitoba's going through some changes. They're going to be starting to allow to grow cannabis. So that's a good thing about it. So.
Pretty exciting.
All right. On to the next story.
Yes, coming to us from SciPost, psychedelic microdosing, a new frontier for treating ADHD symptoms and emotional dysregulation.
A new study published in the journal European Psychiatry has shed light on an unconventional approach to managing symptoms associated with ADHD. The findings suggest that small repeated doses of substances like psilocybin and LSD could potentially help reduce ADHD symptoms and enhance some aspects of emotion regulations. These findings could pave the way for new treatments that could focus not only on the primary symptoms of ADHD, but also improving emotional and social functioning. ADHD is typically marketed by inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness. Beyond these primary symptoms, many individuals with ADHD struggle with emotional regulation and empathy, which can impair their social interactions and relationships.
Wow. Well, conventional ADHD medications like, I can never say that word.
Amphetamines.
Even with you say it first, I can't say it first. And methylphenidate.
You're on your own.
Target the core symptoms. They often fall short in addressing these secondary issues. Interestingly, some adults with severe ADHD symptoms have turned to microdosing, taking minimal doses of psychedelics as a self-treatment. Globally, up to 3% of adults are affected by ADHD. The core ADHD symptoms are known, such as inattention and hyperactivity and impulsivity are known and can be very debilitating. However, less known is that adults with ADHD suffer from problems with emotion regulation too, explained, study author Elaine C.H.M. Hagen, who is a PhD candidate at the Department of Neuropsychology and Pharmacology at Maastricht University.
Some studies have even suggested that emotion regulation should be considered a core component of ADHD, as it experienced by up to 70% of adults with it. Emotion regulation involves all attempts to influence emotional experience and responses. For example, it may involve the ability to interpret an emotion eliciting situation, but also the inhibiting strong positive and negative emotional responses. Related to emotion.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, you can.
Okay. All right. Related to emotion regulation is empathy, and together impairments in these constructs may impair emotional and social functioning. Current conventional ADHD medications, such as amphetamines, and that word again, seems to be effectively addressing emotion regulation impairments, but to a lesser degree than their effect on core ADHD symptoms. Therefore, we wanted to investigate the effects of potential future alternative treatment option, microdosing with psychedelics, to investigate if microdosing is effective in improving emotional regulation and empathy in adults with ADHD.
The researchers conducted 2 studies to investigate psychedelic microdosing impact on adults with severe ADHD symptoms. The first study included participants who either had a formal ADHD diagnosis or displayed severe symptoms indicative of the disorder. Individuals participated on their own initiative, deciding when and how to microdose. The researchers collected data using a series of online surveys that participants completed at baseline before starting the microdosing. And then again, 2 and 4 weeks into their microdosing regime.
These surveys included validated scales like the Conners Adult ADHD Rating Scale for assessing ADHD symptoms, the Emotional Regulation Questionnaire to measure strategies like cognitive reappraisal and excessive suppression, and the interpersonal reactivity index to evaluate different facets of empathy. There were 233 participants at the start of the study, with sample sizes decreased to 64 and 44 at the 2 and 4 week follow-ups, respectively.
Interesting. The results indicated that after 4 weeks of microdosing, participants reported significant improvements in certain aspects of emotion regulation and empathy. Scores for cognitive reappraisal increased, suggesting that participants were better able to reinterpret stressful or emotional situations in a way that reduced their negative impact. Similarly, scores for expressive suppression decreased, indicating a reduction in the effort to inhibit emotional responses, which could suggest a healthier emotional expression and processing. Additionally, the scores for perspective taking improved, which implies that enhanced ability to understand others' point of view. However, the changes in other areas of empathy, such as empathetic concern and personal distress, were not significant, suggesting that the effects of microdosing might be more pronounced in cognitive aspects of empathy than emotional ones.
The second study introduced a control group for a more rigorous comparison. This group consisted of individuals with ADHD who were not microdosing, but were continuing their usual ADHD medication treatments. The researchers collected data at the same 3 time points using the same surveys and scales that were used for the first study. They compared 180 participants who were only microdosing with assessment completions by 50 and 38 participants at 2 week and 4 week marks, to a control group of 37 individuals using conventional ADHD medications, with 27 and 28 completing the 2 and 4 week follow-up, respectively. This comparison approach provided a clear view of how microdosing stacks up against traditional treatments. The findings revealed the microdosing group experienced a more significant decrease in the ADHD symptoms severity across several measures compared to the control group. This included scores for inattention and hyperactivity, impulsivity, which are traditionally targeted by ADHD medications. A better score. Wow.
But when comparing changes in emotion regulation and empathy, the results were mixed. While the microdosing group showed continued improvement in expressive suppression, similar to the first study, no significant differences were found in cognitive reappraisal between the microdosing and control groups after the study period. This suggests that while microdosing may help reduce the need to suppress emotions, it does not necessarily enhance the ability to reinterpret emotional stimuli when compared directly to conventional medications. In terms of empathy, the results did not show significant improvements in the microdosing group compared to the control group, indicating that the benefits observed in the first study might be limited to self-perceived changes within individuals rather than relative to a standard treatment.
There's always a but, isn't there? These findings suggest that microdosing could potentially offer some benefits over traditional medications, particularly in reducing ADHD symptoms and improving certain aspects of emotional regulation. However, the impact on empathy and the broader emotional and social functioning remains unclear and less consistent. We compared individuals with ADHD who were microdosing to individuals with ADHD who were using conventional ADHD medication, Hygen told SciPost. we found that microdosing compared to conventional ADHD medication introduced positive effects on core ADHD symptoms and one aspect of emotional regulation, excessive suppression, which might indicate improved emotional regulation after 4 weeks of microdosing compared to baseline.
Cognitive reappraisal, the other emotion regulation aspect we assessed, and all the empathy facets remain unaffected after microdosing. We highlight the potential therapeutic properties of microdosing in adults with ADHD, but also emphasize the importance of a control group, as initial findings seem to be null findings after comparing them to control data. The study is an initial step paving the way for future, more rigorous controlled clinical trials investigating microdosing in adults with ADHD. The naturalistic design of the study has several benefits, including providing real-world insights into how individuals using microdosing to manage ADHD symptoms on their own terms. The approach allows for observations of genuine behaviors and outcomes in everyday settings, but this method also comes with some inherent drawbacks.
This is a naturalistic study, meaning we do not interfere with participants' microdosing practices, meaning that respondents use the substance, dose, and dosing regime that they preferred. This is the main limitation of such a study design, limiting our ability to draw strong conclusions about the effectiveness of microdosing. However, it still provides enough reason to investigate microdosing in ADHD further.
Yeah. Regarding her long-term goals for this line of research, Hagen explained that she plans to continue investigating if microdosing is a useful alternative option for adults with ADHD through controlled clinical results. If so, we'd like to investigate its working mechanism and how it could be implemented in current clinical care.
There you go. Who knew? Who would think, that microdosing with acid could help be a benefit to people for ADHD. For ADHD,
but I've had chats with Ross Vermigliati, the Olympic snowboarder, and he is somebody that opened my eyes to that. That was his microdose of choice when he was training to keep his focus and whatnot.
Wow. There you go.
Which is pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's commercial break. Time for us to take a break. We're only through the first 3 stories. The long stories. But we're halfway through the broadcast. Actually, we're over halfway through the broadcast.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We'll be back after you hear from our sponsors. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News, found here at paceradio.net. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net. Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
Legacy 420 have an awesome array of cannabis-infused beverages, from pop to Nature's Nectar's teas, all in amazing flavors. What a selection! We even have a delicious mango-infused juice, and let me tell you, it's delicious.
Everything is infused in-house, so we buy our syrup from, the same place where everybody else buys their syrup for their pop, and the infusion is done in the lab. It's all canned here, labeled here, produced 100% on Tyendinaga.
We have 2 lines of drinks. One is called our Nature's Nectar. That was our original line that we came out with. And then we also have a line under the Red E brand. We have them in 10 milligrams, 30 milligram, and 60 milligram cans.
What a great selection for a get-together with friends or after a long day. Remember, if you want to wet your whistle with on-site lab-tested products, come see your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. And we're back from our medication break. What did I miss? Hey, you know what? It's so nice out now. It's that time of year where I can leave the door open and the dog and cats can come and go as they want, and I don't have to keep leaving.
That's wicked.
Yeah, and maybe next week I'll do the news outside because the weather's so good. So, all right, we've got a lot of stories to cover, and hopefully we can get them covered by the top of the hour. So we just better fly through them. So there's some that I make kind of a little short, but we'll get the gist of the story out there. All right, here we go.
Heading over to cannabis.net. But what about the UN drug treaties? Germany imports almost 35 tons of weed, while the U.S. tinkers with rescheduling cannabis.
Germany had a record 34.6 tons of cannabis imported in 2023 for medicinal and research purposes, a significant increase from previous years. This inflow highlights how Europe's biggest medical cannabis market, which is federally regulated, is changing, as seen by the increasing interest that foreign organizations are showing in Germany's cannabis sector. Notwithstanding a little slowdown in growth relative to prior years, the notable rise in imports underscores the nation's critical position in molding the world's cannabis industry. The surge in cannabis imports coincides with significant shifts in Germany's regulatory framework, particularly the abolition of previous cultivation quota system. This system, which restricted domestic cultivation to select few companies, compelled the nation to heavily rely on imports to meet demand. With the introduction of a more flexible conditions for cultivating medical cannabis under the new legislation, Germany aims to reduce its dependence on foreign imports, ushering in potentially transformative era of domestic cannabis industry. Oh, Cindy, that goes back to our first story. Those numbers may lower next year.
Yeah.
Medical cannabis. When you read this,
yeah. The abolition of Germany's growing quota system, which marks a watershed moment in the country's cannabis industry, promises a paradigm shift in cultivation dynamics. Only 3 companies were awarded permits to develop medicinal cannabis under the previous system, following a stringent application process. As a result, their total output was limited to 10,400 kg over 4 years. Wow. As a result, the shortage of supplies from domestic farms forced a considerable reliance on imports to meet rising demand. However, with the latest regulatory revision, enterprises may now apply directly to the Cannabis Agency for permission to produce medical cannabis. This decision marks a shift from the tight quotas of the past, providing a more streamlined and accessible route for firms to engage in cannabis growing. Peter Homburg, a major person in Germany's cannabis business believes that the increased flexibility in cultivation conditions will progressively reduce the need for foreign imports, opening the path for more self-sufficiency in the home market.
Once the growing quota system is removed, there will be a great deal of freedom for expansion and innovation in the German cannabis industry. By allowing a greater variety of companies to engage in cultivation, the regulation change fosters a more competitive environment that is advantageous to development and diversity. Moreover, this is a significant step towards aligning German cannabis regulations within evolving international standards, therefore enhancing the nation's competitiveness in the global cannabis market.
Good for them.
With transition away from the important independence may take time to materialize fully, the dismantling of the cultivation quota system sets the stage for a transformative journey towards the self-sustainability as companies seize the opportunity to expand their cultivation operations under the new regulatory framework. Germany itches closer to realizing its vision of a thriving and resilient domestic cannabis industry.
Yay!
Yay!
Yay for Germany. That's exciting for them.
Yeah. We'll just shut that down. That way we can keep going and catch on to these stories here. But yeah, I can see if they're shutting down imports, I can see that Canada's going to be affected by that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 34 tons they imported. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So those numbers are going to come down. All right, on to the next story.
Coming as from High Times, this is a study. Psilocybin enhances meditation.
Yeah, there you go. According to the new research published in the journal Scientific Reports, psilocybin can boost insightfulness during meditation. The study explored for the first time a data set of functional magnetic responses images collected during focused attention and open monitoring meditation before and after a 5-day psilocybin-assisted meditation retreat using a recently established approach based on the MAPPR algorithm with topological data analysis, the researchers wrote in the abstract.
After generating subject-specific maps for 2 groups, psilocybin versus placebo, 18 subjects per group of experienced meditators, organizational principles were uncovered using graph topological tools, including the optimal transport distance, a geometrically rich measure of similarity between brain activity and patterns, the researchers wrote. This revealed characteristics of the topology in space, i.e. abstract space of voxels, and time dimension of whole brain activity patterns during different styles of meditation and psilocybin-induced alterations. Perhaps most striking of all, the researchers found that psilocybin-induced positive derealization, which fosters insightfulness, specifically when accompanied by enhanced open monitoring meditation, was linked to the OT distance between open monitoring and resting state.
They said that the findings suggest that the enhanced meta-awareness through meditation practice in experienced meditators combined with potential psilocybin-induced positive alterations in perception, meditate, insightfulness. Together, these findings provide a novel perspective on meditation and psychedelics that may reveal potential novel brain markers for positive synergistic effects between mindfulness practices and psilocybin, they wrote.
The research was based on findings involved with 36 experienced meditators who completed 2 fMRIs, brain imaging sessions, 1 day before and after a 5-day psilocybin-assisted meditation retreat following a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled parallel group study design. Placebo or psilocybin, 315 body weight absolute dose, I'm not sure what that is, was administered on the 4th day of the retreat, and the 11-DASC questionnaire for ratings of altered states of consciousness was administered 360 minutes after drug intake as a retrospective measure of subjective effects. Each scan session consisted of a 21 minute of resting state, focused attention, and open monitoring sequences, with each meditation lasting 7 minutes. For each subject, both scan sessions were concocted, and mapper-shaped graphs were generated and analyzed, the researchers explained.
They concluded that compared with meditation alone, psilocybin alters the perception of the external world, presumably by increasing informational richness, which is reflected by increased OT distances between OM and RS post-retreatment. Barrett Singer, one of the study's lead authors, explained the inspiration behind the researchers.
I was interested in the technical part of the topic because I am fascinated by how pure mathematics, especially topology, can be applied to extract important information from latent structures and data that is not apparent to other methods, Singer told the outlet SciPost. Psychedelic neuroscience and mediation is particularly interesting to me because I can see that there is a lot of research needed to better understand the mechanisms of these substances and techniques, and because I wish that this will help to use them in a beneficial way for individuals and society. It surprised me that the subject-specific mapper graphs were at first sight very different and did not seem to share many similarities, but when described and simplified using suitable graph measures, their common structure was revealed and turned out to be quite stable across both groups, Singer continued. In other words, their common features were not obvious to spot by eye from looking at the subject-specific mapper graphs, but only after calculating their topological features.
Singer and the rest of the research team noted in the study that meditation and psychedelics have attracted increasing scientific interest in the recent years. Sure has. While research on the neuropsychological of meditation and psychedelics has grown rapidly, these topics have been studied mainly from the perspective of functional cognitivity, resting state networks, and signal variability, including measures of entropy and criticality. This article targets an alternative approach in which a novel topological data analysis method is applied to the neuropsychological study of the synergistic effects of meditation and psychedelics.
Meditation can be understood as a form of mental training with various aims, including improving cognitive and emotional self-regulation, changing attitudes towards the self and others, including their underlying duality, and cultivating positive emotional states. Different types of meditation can be distinguished with the attentional family of meditation. Two well-researched attentional practices are focused attention practices and open monitoring practices. Focused attention involves narrowing of the attention scope. And of course, open monitoring, in contrast, involves releasing attentional control and bringing awareness to moment experiential content. Psychedelics are a broad class of conscious modulating substances that induce altered states of perception, cognition, emotion, and the sense of self. Classic serotonic psychedelics include LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, and DMT.
There you go. Don't you love those tongue twisting words?
Yes, and I'm really glad that they have like little versions there, so we can just skip right over them.
Skip right over them.
Some of them, anyway.
All righty. Here we go. Next one.
Coming to us from Ganjapreneur, federal cannabis legalization bill filed by Senate Democrats.
All right. Let's see here. Lawmakers in the U.S. Senate this week introduced the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, which seeks to end the federal prohibition of cannabis. This bill was filed by a coalition of Democrats led by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senators Ron Wyden and Cory Booker. In a release by Senator Schumer, he says, "It's past time for the federal government to catch up to the attitudes of the American people when it comes to cannabis. That's why we're reintroducing the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, legislation that would finally end the federal prohibition on cannabis while prioritizing safety, research, workers' rights, and restorative justice. We have more work to do to address decades of over-criminalization, particularly in communities of colors. But today's reintroduction shows the movement is growing, and I will keep working until we achieve meaningful change. Let's do it. Come on.
The CAO, which was first introduced in 2022, would remove cannabis from the federal drug schedule, automatically expunge federal nonviolent cannabis offenses, and establish a grant program aimed at helping individuals who were adversely affected by cannabis prohibition with housing, economic, and community development needs. Those grants and additional plans to expand cannabis research programs would be funded at least in part through a new tax structure on federal regulated cannabis products. These common sense policies will ensure a more equitable criminal justice system and promote public safety, Senator Booker said in a statement.
Lawmakers proposed the bill on the day after it was reported that the DEA intends to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. And a recent poll found that that was done in November, 70% of Americans, adults, support legalizing adult use cannabis. Get it done.
It's about time.
It's about time. You know, it's just ridiculous.
Yep.
It's they gotta get it. They gotta get it done.
Yeah.
All right.
Catch up.
Heading
over to SciPost. Psychedelics could make mental health worse in people with a personality disorder.
Oh, where did it go? Hang on. It didn't show up. There we go. I got it now. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Something that might be on the negative end of things here. The interest in psychedelics is growing both in psychedelic circles and among the public. These are powerful substances capable of altering perception, mood, and various mental processes. They also show promise for treating a whole wide range of mental health disorders. However, for their use to be safe and effective, it's important to understand how they interact with different mental health conditions. This is especially true for personality disorders.
A personality disorder is a type of mental disorder involving rigid and unhealthy patterns of thinking, functioning, and behaving, which significantly affects a person's life. Understanding their interaction with psychedelics is crucial. These substances can deeply influence mental states. They can worsen or improve symptoms in ways unique to these disorders. In a recent study, researchers at Imperial College London investigated the complex relationship between psychedelics and mental health, highlighting the potential risks for people with personality disorders.
The study collected self-reported data from 807 people who use psychedelics in various settings from recreational to therapeutic. These measure participants' mental well-being before and after using psychedelics using a scale called the Warwick Edinburgh Mental Well-Being Scale. The researchers considered it a meaningful drop in mental health if someone's happiness and well-being fell more than what was typical for most people in the study. The researchers specifically looked at those who had negative experiences while on psychedelics. They found that only 16% of all participants reported an overall negative response, but in a significant portion of those significant experiences, which about 1/3 of them, were reported by people with a history of personality disorders.
However, the study has several limitations, including the reliance on self-reported data, the small number of participants, and a 56% dropout rate. All of these factors would have skewed the results. Other limitations, including the lack of a control group, for comparison. Additionally, there are variations in the types and dosages of psychedelics used.
The study's method of participant selection could also lead to biased results, and lumping different personality disorders together might overlook specific risks associated with each. Various personality disorders might respond differently to psychedelics. For instance, people with a histrionic personality disorder, which is excessive attention-seeking and emotional overreaction, or borderline personality disorder, which is an emotional instability, intense relationship, and fear of abandonment, might feel worse or more unstable.
And those with schizotypical personality disorders, which is social anxiety, odd beliefs, and eccentric behavior, and we're talking extreme, could become more paranoid. And people with narcissistic personality disorder, excessive self-importance, lack of empathy, and need for admiration may struggle with the self-reflective nature of psychedelics because they often have a hard time handling criticism.
I know somebody who should not do psychedelics. Considering the study's notable limitations, we must approach its findings with some skepticism, but the study does recognize the potential benefits of psychedelics for mental health, stressing the need for careful screening for personality disorders.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's just like with cannabis, right? The same thing. The same thing there. If somebody has, they shouldn't be, taking cannabis. Just so you know, before I forget.
Yeah. Good day, Steve.
Good day, Steve. All right, I'll get the next one lined up here, and as soon as I got it lined up, I will let you know. All right, there we go.
Okay. We're heading over to Ganjapreneur. Poll: most Americans think cannabis baking would benefit public safety.
Yes, it sure would. Recent polling data from the Independent Community Bankers of America suggests most Americans believe that giving cannabis companies access to traditional banking services would benefit public safety, according to a press release. Sure it does. The data published on Thursday, ahead of the 2024 ICBA Capital Summit in Washington, D.C., found that
64% of Americans believe the Secure and Fair Enforcement Regulations, SAFER Banking Act, would protect federally regulated financial institutions that serve state legal cannabis companies and would benefit public safety. Additionally, 54% of Americans agree that allowing cannabis companies to utilize traditional banking system would benefit underserved communities.
The ICBA polling data also found that 63% of American adults believe cryptocurrencies should be regulated at least as stringent as banks, so on and so forth. Meanwhile, the American Bankers Association this week that after cannabis was moved to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act, traditional banking services will not be available to state legal cannabis markets. Rather, Congress must first adopt the Safer Banking Act or a similar proposal to give the industry proper banking access. Why not pass the Safer Banking Act along with the CEO Act at the same time so that cannabis can become legal in the United States? Mm-hmm. They're both right there. Both laws are introduced. It's just get it done. Get it done. All right. I'm bringing up the last story of the day here.
Okay. Yeah, we are heading over to CTV News Toronto. Toronto mayor responds to criticism on city's request to decriminalize certain drugs.
Yeah. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow is responding to criticism over Toronto's efforts to decriminalize drugs in the wake of the opioid crisis, saying it misses a much more urgent need. Olivia Chow says people are going through the cycle and they're not getting anywhere. She says that during an interview with CP24's Breakfast Friday, referring to people who are arrested for drug possession before being released with no place to go.
She said many of the people living on the streets of Toronto have addiction issues that can't properly be resolved without housing. On streets, in libraries and community centers, in the subways are people desperately needing help. And we literally don't have enough shelters for them. We're turning away 200 people plus per night, Chow said. So I'd rather focus on something practical. House these folks. Get them into a treatment program.
Earlier this week, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre sent a letter to the federal government asking it to deny Toronto's request to decriminalize simple possession of small amounts of drugs for personal use. Toronto's medical officer of health, Elaine Davila defended the city's request in a statement, saying that decriminalization is fundamentally recognizing that addiction is a health issue, and said decriminalization is not the same as legalization. She said the city urgently needs more publicly funded treatment programs.
Absolutely.
And that's, yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, there's programs that are in the midst. It's things got to be done.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. Chow echoed this statement Friday, but said the debate misses the point. Whether federal officials say yes or no at this point, we still don't have the treatment programs, Chow said, and we are seeing the impact of it. You see it on the street, right? There are some people that are not well. She said decriminalization really is the end of the conversation rather than the start, and said on the ground, practical solutions like housing are where she'd rather focus her energy when it comes to the opiate crisis.
The renewed debate comes as BC asked the federal government to walk back some parts of an exemption it was granted as part of the pilot project in 2023. Toronto has asked for a similar exemption to allow simple possession of small amounts of hard drugs, but it is still being considered by the federal government. There you go. What do you think?
Well,
decriminalization of hard drugs has worked in Portugal. Helped there big time.
Yeah, it takes away the stigma, and it gives people the courage to stand up and say, I'm addicted to this and I need help, without worrying about being arrested or being thrown in jail. And eventually, the stigma will change from looking at people with addiction with a hard eye as if they're criminals to a soft eye of a human that has a medical condition that needs some help.
Yeah. It's, it's unfortunate, but unfortunately, I think come the next election here in Canada, there might be some changes, and maybe we'll be back to the old method, trying to arrest our way out of.
We're gonna get nowhere.
Yeah. All right. Anything before we want to say goodbye? I'm
happy to be back. Hi.
All right. From the Legacy420.com news desk, that's the news for today. We hope you found it educational and informative. Thanks to Legacy420.com, Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, and Limestone City Hydroponics.ca, and to you for watching the show, and Sydney for coming back from your holidays. And we'll see everybody again in the news Thursday morning when Glenn and I return. We'll see you all then. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy 420 is so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420 enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.